reasons leading up to Pre Trib Rapture. I'm going to go over some study here that one of the things that's being challenged today in these latter days is people coming against a Pre Trib Rapture. Calvary chapels, for the most part, if not all, believe in a Pre Trib Rapture. But there's many churches today that some are in apostasy and some are not studying their Bible carefully, and they are leaving the concept, the doctrine of a pre-tribulation rapture. So we're going to go over that and talk about it. Albert's got me on the list as eschatology. A study of eschatology is the branch of Christian theology that deals with the biblical study of end-time prophecies and the events of the last days. Some of these events include the rapture, the second coming of Christ, tribulation, millennial kingdom, and future judgments. I listed 3 books. Those are main books, but there are other books within the Bible that talk about the coming day of the Lord, the terrible and awesome day of the Lord that comes as a thief in the night. So the world won't be expecting it. But the main books that most people who study eschatology go to: the book of Daniel, the book of Ezekiel, and of course the book of Revelation. These main prophecies point to the latter days. When did the latter days start? Well, the latter days really started back in the early church. But it started when Jesus Christ was rejected. Once the Jews rejected their Messiah, the latter days began. And we've been seeing Christ rejectors clear up until today. I mean, you can look at all the denominations, all the different religions around the world. They're all Christ rejectors. It's the church that loves and receives Christ. It's the blessed hope. The rapture is the blessed hope. What's happening in the Revelation, in the tribulation period, the wrath of God comes upon the world because they did not have the love of the truth in them. The churches, as I'll show, the church is going to be taken out before this happens. But the love of the truth, Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. He's the truth. The love of the truth is Jesus. So the world doesn't love Jesus. So many Christians believe that we are currently living in the latter days, a biblical term for the prophesied period of time, which will occur at the very end of our age. Are we living in these days? Can it be proven objectively that we are living in the latter days? The answer is yes, it can. We'll start with the regathering of God's people. And I have a few. These quotes that I'm going to be, scriptures that I'm going to be quoting are proof that we are in the latter days, because the latter days is really, the 7-year tribulation is really about Israel, not about the church, and I'll show you that. More than 2,600 years ago, God told the prophet Ezekiel of his plan to regather the Jews from 4 corners of the earth where they had been scattered and bring them back into the land of Israel. Well, God prophesies too that, as I read forward, that the nation of Israel would be born in a day. And then he said to me, Son of man, those bones represent the people of Israel. They are saying, we have become old, dry bones. All hope is gone. Now give them this message from the sovereign Lord. O my people, I will open your graves of exile and cause you to rise again. Then I will bring you back to the land of Israel. When this happens, O my people, you will know that I am the Lord. And that's what's happening. All the Jews were scattered, and after the temple was destroyed, and that a direct correlation of rejecting Christ. They did not study their Bible. They did not realize that, the Pharisees and Sadducees did not look into the Word, see that the Messiah was coming. So they paid a price for that. They were scattered throughout the world, but God didn't merely promise to regather the Jewish people in the land of Israel. He promised to breathe life back into the nation. In fact, he promised Israel would be a nation born in a single day. Here's the verse, Isaiah 66, 8 through 9. Who has ever seen or heard of anything as strange as this? Has a nation ever been born in a single day? Has a country ever come forth in a mere moment? But by the time Jerusalem's birth pains begin, the baby will be born. The nation will come forth. Would I ever bring this nation to the point of birth and then not deliver it? Key verse right there when you study that. It says, will I not deliver it? During the tribulation period, God will be delivering Israel through that time. Ask the Lord, no, I would never keep this nation from being born, says your God. Israel, Jerusalem becomes a burdensome stone. It says, I will make Jerusalem and Judah like an intoxicating drink to all the nearby nations that send their armies to besiege Jerusalem. On that day I will make Jerusalem a heavy stone, a burden for the world. None of the nations who try to lift it up will escape unscathed. That's true today. We're seeing not that we're in the tribulation, but we're seeing that any nation that tries to burden itself with Israel becomes affected by it. I'll tell you a quick little story real quick. Many years ago, Israel was trying to, the United States was supporting the moving of Israelis out of the Golden Heights. And they were up there forcing them right out of the Golden Heights, taking them forcibly out. And when the moment that began to happen, on the Atlantic side of Florida, there's a hurricane just sitting there. And then all of a sudden that hurricane just went over the tip of Florida, headed down, and came into the Gulf, and became Katrina. And they say the amount of disproportional people that was taken out of the Golden Heights in that area was the same amount that was moved out of Louisiana and Mississippi and all those areas. God said to Abraham, I'll curse those who curse you, and I'll bless those who bless you. America has always been a blessing for Israel. But now, because of different ideological ideas and political reasons, our country is turning away from Israel. We see that happening with our current president. I will make Jerusalem and Judah like an intoxicating drink to all the nearby nations that send their armies to besiege Jerusalem. On that day I will make Jerusalem a heavy stone, a burden for the world. None of the nations will try to lift it up and will escape its scatch. The destruction of Damascus is another end-time prophecy. Damascus is one of the oldest cities way back in biblical times. It says, this message came to me concerning Damascus. Look, Damascus will disappear. It will become a heap of ruins. The cities of Aor will be deserted. Sheep will graze in the streets and lie down unafraid. There will be no one to chase them away. The fortified cities of Israel will be also destroyed. The power of Damascus will end. Isaiah 17:1-3. Currently, Damascus is the world's oldest continuously inhabited city. So this is clearly an unfulfilled Bible prophecy, one scheduled to be fulfilled in our generation. Right now it's being occupied by Russia. We'll cover that in a minute on Gog and Magog. We see that Iran, of course, through our help, has already been able to begin to start building weapons of mass destruction. So, the war of Gog and Magog. The leader of that coalition, which includes Russia, which is the old name is Magog, Iran, the old name is Persia, Ethiopia, the old name is Cush. When you look in the Bible, those are the words you'll see. Libya is Put, Turkey is Gomar, and others. And Gog of Magog, is the leader. Russia is the leader over these, or will be during that time, fully over it. Therefore, Son of Man, prophesy against Gog. Give him this message from the sovereign Lord. When my people are living in peace in their land, then you will arouse yourself. You will come from your homeland in the distant north with vast cavalry and your mighty army, and you will cover the land like a cloud. This will happen in the distant future. I will bring you against my land as everyone watches. And my holiness will be displayed by what happens to you. Then all the nations will know that I am the Lord. This is what the Lord's saying is the Lord is personally going to get involved in this war, and the whole world's going to witness it. He's going to rescue Israel. The third temple, that's another coming event. Right now, many, many years ago, National Geographic came out with all the implements of the Leviticus and all the temple artifacts, all the stuff they use, the menorah, the showbread table, all that stuff. They have now recreated all that. It's cost millions and millions of dollars. They have it under there. They've even found the red heifer, which is a sacrificial bull for the sins of the nation or the priest, and it has to be without blemish, and they have recently found that. So everything is in place for the temple. Okay, so in case there's any doubt, Paul confirms in his second letter to the Thessalonians what Daniel and Jesus have already confirmed. The Antichrist will stand in the temple and proclaim himself to be God. So this verse alone tells you that the Antichrist has to stand somewhere, so the temple has to be built in order for him to do that. He will exalt himself and defy every god there is and tear down every object of adoration and worship. He will position himself in the temple of God, claiming that he himself is God. Jesus said that in the Olivet Discourse, Matthew 24. He went on to say that when you see the abomination of desolation take place, flee. And that was the Antichrist walking into the Holy of Holies, declaring himself to be God. Jesus and the fig tree. So when all these things take place, when will all the end-time prophecies concerning Israel finally reach fulfillment? Almost 2,000 years ago, Jesus gave us this answer. Now learn a lesson from the fig tree. When it buds, become tender, and its leaves begin to sprout, you will know without being told that summer is near. Just so, when you see the events I've described beginning to happen, you can know his return is near, very near, right at the door. I assure you, this generation will not pass from the scene before all these things take place. Heaven and earth will disappear, but my words will remain forever. So all these things we're seeing coming to pass, and he did talk about in the Olivet Discourse, I'm not covering that now, but he did talk about events on the planet. The earth would become like a woman in travail. As she gets close to giving birth, her intensity pains become more and more intense and more often. And he described those pains were earthquakes, floods, famines, pestilence, all the sort that we're seeing today. And so we hear now in the news back east, people are saying, wow, we've never experienced a snowstorm ever like this. So we're seeing the intensity take place. We're seeing earthquakes. The earthquake in Japan was a very intense earthquake. And God says through the Olivet Discourse that it's going to get worse as we move closer and farther in the last days. This here is, what I have up here is the Rapture Views. There is, 20 years ago when you would talk about the subject was pre-rapture tribulation. There wasn't mid-tribulation. Post-tribulation, pre-wrath. It was there, but it wasn't like people weren't really owning up to them. But now it's getting really bad. So what is the pre-tribulation rapture? The rapture will occur before the tribulation period. You see in that arrow there, the rapture goes up, the church goes up, we're in heaven, and then we come back with the Lord at the second coming. Mid-tribulation rapture theory is the rapture will occur in the middle of the tribulation. Okay, so there's things happening to people, which I'll read in a minute. And then the post-tribulationism I have, it's a view that the rapture will happen towards the end or at the end of the tribulation period. There's many out there today in the church, Christian believers across the world, a lot in America, that don't own up to the pre-tribulation rapture. They believe, no, we're going to be going into the tribulation period, and we're going to have to endure this hardship and put up with it. If that were not enough, if that were not complicated enough, you would have another view that comes along called the pre-wrath rapture, where they sort of put the rapture in the middle of the second half of the tribulation, sometimes called the three-quarter rapture, because the rapture will be roughly three-quarters of the tribulation period. So they've got everybody's got every area covered. So with all the confusion by the different teachings of the rapture, no wonder Christians throw up their arms and throw up their hands, and some believers, to be safe, have suggested, let's just pray for a pre-rapture, but prepare for a post. Just in case we have to go through it, we'll have all of our foods and stuff in storage and all that. Right? But plan for a post. This is one of the types of the critical comments. This person is Rick Wiles. He has an app called True News. It's End Times News. He does have some good speakers on there, but he is a post-tribulation rapturist. And he makes his point clear on the air and with everybody. Here's a quote from him. I personally do not believe that the year 2020, by the year 2020, any credible person will be teaching the secret pre-trib rapture doctrine. I think the events that are coming in the next 5 years will utterly destroy the doctrine. So he's saying that we're heading into some very rough waters, but he believes he's going to be going through it. And he's adamant that those who believe in a pre-trib rapture have got some blinders on. Okay? So you probably know this, that when you get on the internet and you go to search and look into the doctrine of the pre-trib rapture, it's under attack. I went on Amazon a few months ago just to order some books because I wanted to fine-tune my information about the rapture. So when I went on Amazon, I saw pre-trib rapture, so I ordered that. You can get them used real cheap. I got them, and I started going through them, and they're against the pre-trib rapture. I go, what? Yeah, they're against it, and they were putting it down. They're saying, people like Hal Lindsey and, all these other prophecy teachers and everything are lost. They don't know what they're talking about, the pre-trib. So that's how bad it's getting there. You got to look at the books you order now real closely and make sure. But as you study into the rapture, it becomes with more and more certainty that the Scripture is clear, that the rapture will take place before the tribulation period begins. But how can the pre-rapture be a secret if everyone knows? If the pre-rapture happened today, the world would know. All the Christians would end up disappearing. There'd be, and who knows what takes place, right? I mean, during that rapture, people driving cars, flying planes, do they disappear? Do these planes and cars wreck and all that? It'll be all over the news. So let's talk about tribulation's purpose. What's the purpose of the tribulation period? Its purpose concerns Israel. Jeremiah 37. Alas, for the day is great. There is none like it. It is the time of Jacob's distress. A lot of people read to some translations, the time of Jacob's trouble. But he will be saved from it. Israel will be saved from this time of the tribulation period. And we know from the book of Genesis, Jacob's name is changed to Israel. So we know that took place, right? So God has his hand on Israel in the tribulation period and is beginning and is bringing the remnant to faith so he can fulfill his covenants with them. Okay? So God is still fulfilling the promises that he made Israel. early back in the Old Testament. So the tribulation concerns Israel. Daniel 9:24 gives you essentially who the 70th week prophecy is about, which would include the tribulation period. And the verse says, 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your city. Now, who is Daniel's people and their city? It's Israel. And one of the important things to understand, and if you don't understand this, you will have difficulty understanding Bible prophecy. And I think that's a problem with the church today. They're mixing and matching prophecies in the Bible, and they're confusing it with Israel and with the church. And one of the verses that comes to mind is 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15, right? Approved workmen are not ashamed, rightly dividing the word of God, right? So a lot of these people that think they're going to go through the tribulation period or have a misconfusion of end-time prophecy, when they enter heaven, they're going to be ashamed of all the people they may have led astray, or turned off because they didn't have it right. God has two great programs, one for Israel and one for the church. It's like two train tracks. The church is on one train track, Israel's on the other. And so when you study the Bible, you have to ask yourself which prophecies pertain to Israel and which pertain to the church. And the tribulation period all the time relates to national Israel. Daniel 12:7 says, times, and half a time, when the power of the holy people has finally been broken, all these things will be completed. God is dealing with their stubbornness. It says, what is the purpose of the tribulation period? It's to shatter the holy people of Israel. It is often stated that God knocks us down so that we look up. That's how he got a hold of all of us, right? He knocked us down and we finally turned to God and we repented and asked the Lord into our hearts. And that's how he got a hold of us. So the purpose of the tribulation period is why would the church go through the tribulation period? We already have faith, right? We already acknowledge Jesus. And Israel is yet to do that. And that's why the tribulation period is there. It's also for a Gentile believing world too. No biblical reference to the church on the end on earth during the tribulation period. There is no biblical reference to the church on the earth in the section of Scripture that spells out the tribulation period, which is basically Revelation 4 through 19. That's after the seven churches. There is the absence of any reference to the church on earth between chapter 4 and chapter 19, and this has often been called the concept of the missing church. You no longer see the church mentioned in the book of Revelation during that tribulation period. So Revelation 1:9, it gives you an outline of the tribulation period in the book of Revelation. And this is what it says. It was God's instruction to John. The things that you have seen is the vision of the glorified Christ that John saw on the island of Patmos. That was the first thing he saw. Revelation 1, which was around AD 95. The things that are, which is the 7 letters to the 7 churches. Those were the things that were at that time. John was there. And then the things that will take place after these things. This is a futuristic section of the book between chapter 4 and chapter 22. It's very interesting what you discover when you look at these 3 sections. The word church, which is the Greek word ecclesia, is used 19 times in chapters 1 through 3. And how many times in the futuristic section? Zada, zilch, zero. Not even mentioned at all. So we can begin to see that, well, where's the church in the tribulation period? The only time John mentions the church is at the very end of the book. He signs off and writes this teaching, these things, he signs off and writes, teach these things to the churches. So after that, the church has disappeared from the book of Revelation. Except when you get to chapter 22, and then it brings up the church again. In fact, take a look at Revelation 13:9. It's a little phrase that keeps showing up in Revelation 2 and 3, and it says this: if anyone has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. It says that 7 times in Revelation 2 and 3. Notice 13:9 is comfort. 13:9 in the book of Revelation is comforting those who are being persecuted at the beast during the by the beast during the tribulation. If anyone has a ear, let him hear. But it doesn't say to the churches. It finishes right there at that thing. It mentions he who has a ear, let him hear. But the church isn't. That statement with the word church in is no longer there. What is the church in Galatians chapter 3, verse 28? It says, there is neither Jew nor Gentile. Interesting, you're going through the tribulation period happens, and the church is gone, so what do you have in the tribulation? You have the Jew and you have the Gentile. Right? But what does Paul say? The church is not, there was neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor there is male or female, for all are one in Christ Jesus. The issue is the church is not a nationality. Okay? Look at the nations in the church. It's a new man. Paul calls it the body of Christ, where we have equal standing in the new man and spiritual man in the church, regardless of ethnicity. It's different with the nation of Israel. But what we have here in Revelation 22, God using a nation, Revelation 4 through 22, God is using a nation, a national distinction of the Old Testament era. Right? That's being raised. So the church is gone. It's just really all about Israel. God works through Israel. In Revelation chapter 7, God is using 144,000 Jews. Now that looks kind of nationalistic to me, doesn't it? Doesn't it to you? In chapter 11, God is using 2 Jewish witnesses who look an awful lot like Moses and Elijah. Revelation chapter 12, who is Satan persecuting? Not the church. You know, what do we read? We do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness in high heavenly places. The Antichrist is going against the physical body, and that is the nation of Israel. But who is Satan persecuting? Not the church, but a woman clothed with the sun and the moon and the 12 stars. Does that sound familiar? We've just been studying that on Wednesday nights. If the church really is mentioned at all in, if we study Joseph's dream in Genesis 37, 9 through 10, you'll see that's a dead ringer for the nation of Israel. Okay? If the church really is mentioned at all in that futuristic section with the book of Revelation dealing with the tribulation period, we're in heaven. You know, we're already in heaven when that happens. Revelation 1:20, he says this, the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. Revelation 4:5 says 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne. See, they're never on earth, they're always in heaven. So that representing the church. So we see that the tribulation concerns Israel. There is no biblical reference to the church on earth during the futuristic section of the book of Revelation. And the church is promised an exemption from divine wrath, and the tribulation period represents divine wrath. We'll see a little bit more of that. The church is promised exemption from divine wrath. And then we have the promised exemption of divine wrath in the tribulation equals divine wrath. So we'll cover that right now. Jesus who rescues us from the wrath to come. And there are many verses like that tell us we are not candidates for divine wrath. That's 1 Thessalonians 5:9, Romans 5:9, and Revelation 3:10. And when you start getting into the book of Revelation and what you discover in the book of Revelation, God's wrath is being poured out. Notice, if you will, Revelation chapter 6, 16 and 17. And said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. Now, why would Jesus be persecuting his own body? His body being the church, us. We make up the body of Christ. And one of the things people want to argue today is that the wrath of the Lamb does not really start until the later part of the tribulation. I believe it starts instantaneously as a thief in the night. That is the coming terrible day of the Lord. We have God's role in Revelation. John's sealed scroll. John weeps because he feels there's no one qualified to open the seals, and which, of course, the Lamb of God comes forward and does that. Christ himself. Here Christ qualified to open the scroll. Christ takes the scroll. Christ praised by different entities in heaven, glorifying Christ. Now, where is Jesus during this time? Jesus is portrayed in heaven opening the seventh scroll, which introduces the very judgments on the earth. Revelation 5:7 says, he came and took the book out of the right hand of him who sat upon the throne. Revelation 6:1 says, the Lamb broke one of its seals. And the reason that's significant is a lot of people try to argue that those first seal judgments are really not God's judgment. That they're just man's judgment, or they're Satan's wrath. And that's not so. This tells you right there that it's the Lamb who's instituting these wraths upon an unbelieving group of people during the tribulation period. The six seal judgments, the advent of Christ, the war, famine, death, martyrs, cosmic disturbances. But is it really true that the advent of the Antichrist, war, famine, death of the world's population is not the wrath of God? I believe it is, personally. Especially when there is someone named Jesus is opening these scrolls, which brings the wrath to the earth. God is in control of all these wraths. And people say all the time, oh, you people who are into the pre-tribulation rapture, you're just teaching escapism. And in actuality, isn't all of Christianity escapism? I mean, we're not going to hell, right? We escaped hell. That sounds like escapism to me. But in another sense, we're really not teaching escapism because man is a candidate for the trials of life. As we read and study, we have our own man's wrath. We have Satan's wrath. You know, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood. So we have that upon us. We have the world's wrath. So we deal with our tribulations. Okay? So, you know, life on this planet is not easy for the believer. However, this form of wrath that we are exempted from, and that's God's wrath. So we go through tribulation, the little t. Okay? That's us. We have the little t of tribulation, not the tribulation capital T. That's the big T. We go through tests, the little t for test, but not the big test, capital T. So we are exempted from divine wrath. fourth reason why the doctrine of pre-tribulation is an accurate one is because the doctrine of imminency. Apostle Paul talked about that in the early church to the Thessalonians. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, the dead in Christ should rise first, and then those who are yet still alive would meet the Lord in the air or in the clouds. That's a moment in the twinkling of an eye is faster than a nanosecond. It's very fast. So the rapture is imminent. So because the rapture is imminent, it must take place before the tribulation period will begin. So what do we mean by imminence? Especially what is meant by that is the rapture can begin at any time. It could have happened back in Paul's day. It could have happened throughout history, but it's still yet to happen. The rapture, the way it is set up in the New Testament, it's called a signless event. There's no prophetic signs that have to come before the rapture appears. Like there is in the second coming. Second coming has all kinds of signs. There is no prophetic sign that must precede it. It can happen in the next split second. It can happen before this presentation over. And maybe some of you are praying right now that this rapture would happen right now. Right? As I linger on through this thing. So this is what is meant by imminency. So what you discover is the coming of Christ for His church is at an any moment example. For example, in James 5, we are to be patient and strength. He says, we are to be patient and strengthen your hearts, for the Lord's coming is near. Now, how can you be patient in the tribulation period? How can you be, strengthening your heart when you're being chased around by the Antichrist? Cut your head off. You don't take a mark. That doesn't match up. 1 Corinthians verse 7 says, we wait eagerly for the return of our Christ. Okay? We're waiting eagerly. The word eagerly. We're excited. We're looking forward that the Lord would bring us home, bring us up to heaven. So there's many verses that talk about that. So the fact of the matter, we are not looking for the Antichrist. I love to study the Antichrist. It's a fascinating character in history. It's not the only thing I obviously have studied. My preoccupation is when we see these things begin to happen, lifting up our heads, looking up, for our redemption draweth nigh. That's why we study the Bible prophecy. That's why we study in time. We want to make sure that our heads are looking up and we're looking to the soon return of the Lord for the church. And that keeps us motivated, keeps us into serving in the body, motivates us to right living. It's just that we know the Lord. So if the Lord's coming and the Lord's going to take the church, wouldn't it be nice to be doing something for the Lord at the time He returns? That would be, come in, my blessed servant, that verse. Rapture Views again. We're back to that. So, Mr. Tribulationist, can Jesus come back today? The answer is no. 42 months of tribulation period must first exist in order for that to happen. Mr. Post-Tribulationist, can Jesus come back today? No. 7 years of tribulation must manifest itself. Mr. Three-Quarters Rapture, can Jesus come back today? No. There has to be a long sequence of prophetic events before Jesus can come back. Mr. Pre-Tribulationist, the view I've always had, can Jesus come back today? The answer is yes. See, we are the only view that teaches that at any moment the appearance of Jesus can happen for the church. The rapture is a comfort. The doctrine of the rapture is designed to comfort the believer. See, if anyone teaches you the rapture and you get filled with fear and anxiety, you don't understand the doctrine. You haven't done your homework as a Bible student. The purpose of the doctrine is to bring comfort to the believer. See, Jesus introduced the rapture in John 14, 1 through 3. This he said, "Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, and there I am." And when Jesus comes in the second coming with the angels, what happens? The angels go and get the tares and the wheat and go and gather them. Right? No, we're going to meet the Lord in the air. There's no one. He receives us unto himself, the Word of God says. Not angels coming and taking us. He receives us unto himself. So let me ask you a question. Which of these views brings comfort to your life? Someone tells me, yes, I'm going to go through the tribulation period, experience the wrath of God, assuming that the Antichrist doesn't cut off my head. I have the hope of being raptured. So comfort yourself with these words. So how are you going to comfort yourself with these words if you know the Antichrist is chasing you? Right? It doesn't fit. You see, the doctrine of comfort with the doctrine of pre-tribulation rapture does fit. And it fits nicely. But it doesn't fit with those other views. Symbolic parallel. I've talked about this before at the men's dinner, and I'll mention briefly on that. Symbolic parallel, 2 Peter, Enoch is taken. We'll go over that real quick here. And as it was in the days of Noah, so will it be also in the days of the Son of Man. They ate, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. Likewise, as it was also in the days of Lot. They ate, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted stuff, they built stuff. But on the day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even so will it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. Today, people are eating and marrying and drinking and doing all these things, but the day of the Lord is coming. And it comes as a thief in the night, so that tells you that it's going to come unexpectedly to the world. The world has their eyes on the world. The church has their eyes on Jesus Christ. And we are children of the day, not of the night. We're not in darkness. We're in the light. So we know by reading the Word that we see through the events that I'm talking about, we see that that day is approaching of the rapture, and the rapture is going to happen before that too. Okay, so Jesus himself. So Jesus says himself, do you want a paradigm for the end times? Let me draw your attention to two events in history. First is the flood of Noah. Now we know that the apostles came to Jesus and said, what would be the sign of the end of the age and your return? And he began to describe the events that would take place. And he also mentioned that would be in like the days of Noah and the days of Lot. Okay, two specific paradigms. Okay, so we know that the first is the flood in Noah's day, and the second is the time around Genesis 19 when God rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed the wicked cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. So the Lord himself says, if you want a paradigm for the end, you have to study those events in history. So let me ask you a question. What do those events have in common? And in those circumstances, The righteous are removed in both circumstances. The righteous are removed from harm's way before the judgment begins. Okay, if we want to know what's going to happen in the last days, we've got to know what happened in the times of Noah and Lot. It is not true that Enoch in Genesis 5, is it not true that Enoch in Genesis chapter 5 was taken to heaven? Yeah. Enoch walked with God and God took him. A rapture for himself is what it was. Just prior to the flood, is it not true that Noah's family was tucked safely and securely in the ark? Genesis 6 and 7, before the floodwaters hit. Beyond that, let's take a look at Sodom and Gomorrah. The same sort of thing happened there. In the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, we run into this guy named Lot. Now, Lot is not exactly a role model for the spiritual life. Okay? He pitched his tents toward Sodom. He is sitting at the city gates, conveying he had some sort of position of authority. There, Lot is the one who offered his own virgin daughters to the sodomite crowd. And finally, Lot wakes up and gets serious about spiritual things. His own in-laws think he is just jesting. The man had lost all spiritual credibility. You know, when he went to say, hey, come with me, this place is going to be destroyed. Yeah, okay, whatever. So, so how does the story end, the story of Lot? It ends in Genesis 19, verses 30 through 38. With Lot in a incestuous relationship with his daughters, with his two daughters, and drunk going along with that. From those unholy unions comes the Moabites and the Ammonites. And they became the enemies of Israel. So see what happened after that. And yet, 2 Peter 7 and 8, 3 times he's called righteous, a righteous man. If I didn't have that verse, I would have thought that that Lot was an unbeliever. You know. So what was he? Well, he would be an example of a backsliding believer. Someone who is positionally right before God because of faith, but his lifestyle didn't match his position. We see that today. We have relatives and everybody, they've received Christ, but they've gone back in the world. And what does the New Testament call these people? They call them carnal Christians. So a good question for us to ask ourselves is, are we a lot like Lot? Are we a lot like Noah? He is a negative example, but yet, what does the Bible say? Even this guy Lot, in his carnality, he was one of God's people. And you know, and really when you look at it, what saves us? You know, if you say in your heart you're without sin, you're a liar and God is not with you. So we have this propensity to continue to sin, but what does Paul say? He says, set aside the sin that entangles you and move forward, you know, in the things that God has planned for us. So Lot, even though he was in his carnality, the angel that came down, and I'll read that right here. Notice in Genesis 19 and verse 22, this is the work of the destroying angel. When he came to Sodom and Gomorrah, he says, Lot, hurry, escape, for I cannot do anything. Not, I will not do anything. He didn't say that. He says, I cannot do anything until you leave. The name of the town is Zoar. And Zoar, I have here, it was one of the cities that was allotted to be destroyed along with Sodom and Gomorrah and some other cities. Lot ran to that city to escape. That city survived because of Lot. Righteousness had entered it. So isn't it interesting, even Lot in his carnal state, he had to be removed or taken out of harm's way before fire and brimstone could rain down. So we see that God is very good at receiving the godly and keeping the ungodly under the judgment for the day of his wrath. Okay? A quick recap. Oh, I have one more note. So God has a pattern in history before he performs judgment of taking his own people out of harm's way before his wrath. So this fits with the Lord's teaching that if you want to understand the end, then look at the patterns of the time of Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah, Noah and the flood. And I'll tell you what, guys, it is really deeper than just that. If you really look into that time period and you look at the sons of God who looked upon the women of the earth and they came into them, and Nephilim were born. That was the same period, and God says it'll be as the days of Noah and as the days of Lot. So those are some deep studies and very interesting that leads you to some events that are going to happen in the future regarding even those verses. That before judgment hits, even in a carnal state, God removed them before judgment hit. So the whole body of Christ will be removed out of harm's way. That is the blessed hope. That is the comfort we have when someone comes up to you and says, you know what, we're going through the tribulation period, you better, you better do something. And we say, you know what, I'm a pre-tribulationist. Oh, come on, you're kidding me. Maybe, yeah. And you know what, when we get to heaven, I'll tell you. And you'll say that. Oops, sorry. So, because there's a crown waiting for those who are expecting the return. So I'll have my crown. He'll be there. Sorry, you missed a crown. You made it to heaven, but you missed a crown. So a recap is tribulation's purpose concerns Israel. No biblical reference to the church on earth during the tribulation period. The church is promised an exemption from divine wrath. The rapture is imminent. The rapture is comfort. The symbolic parallels that talk about that, as we saw in Lot. There were a lot of other notes that took me way out there. I did really want to cover more about the Antichrist. I wanted to talk about Islam, the Shiites and the Sunnis, and other various characters in these last days that are coming on the scene. But my slide went way out there, and someone would get mad at me for taking over their section of the speaking. So the last word is Maranatha. Hurry, Lord. Come. Come quickly, Lord Jesus. Thank you.